board with, thank you for connecting those dots, all fits. Now we're going to Rob Palmer. If you can introduce more of your views and connect the dots and introduce what you're doing as well. Robert.
Thank you, Dan. I just want to say, man, it's really comforting and reassuring to listen to all you speak. It's like connecting on a level like this. I've been, looking for here in California, and to find all these people in one room is just fantastic. I had a few points I wanted to share from this conversation that people were saying. Just pull up real quick. I really synergize a lot what you said with the exponential organizations. And actually, your work at Singularity University has really inspired me to build my vision. And I was like, I saw a sheet about exponential entrepreneurship, and it said going for that moonshot vision, 10x everything. And I went with it. I was like, all right, he's telling me to go big and go crazy. So I went for it, and I created a really great, big plan I'm going to talk more about later. Also, Raphael, what you mentioned with the survival mode, same time going with this 10x thing and doing my research on all these solutions are available, I was kind of losing myself. I was going crazy. It's like, wow, the world's in this crazy place where about like, either it's going to go great or it's going to go terrible. But we have all these amazing solutions, and like, what is people talking about it? And I was in survival mode. And I was having a really hard time in building my business. So a tip of advice to anyone watching this is, if you're in survival mode, you cannot be in survival mode. You cannot build a business in survival mode. It's really difficult, next to impossible. So I would just encourage you, fix your survival mode first, get out of the situation, get into living, and then potentially get into thriving. Now I'm in thriving mode. Things are going great. All my businesses are succeeding, and I'm just super happy. So just want to share that tip of advice. Steve, I love that 30-to-1 salary cap. I want to implement that. I really love that. I think it's going to be ingenious. And Maya, I synergize all your points, and I really appreciate like the conversation is really deep, and we're talking about like the biggest problems and the fundamental aspects of humans and like how we work together. And it reminded me of something I read recently. It was basically like looking at all the animals, like what makes humans different. You look at the super organisms of all humans, and what makes us different is that we are able to consciously cooperate at scale. Just so for reference, that means collaborating at scale, right, is the difference between like a bear who hunts by himself and maybe with a pack versus a pack of birds, right? They all fight together and they all work together in a larger way. But the difference is, another good example is like colonies of ants, right? They're able to harvest food, bring it back to the tribe. But a funny example was the difference between those animals and us is that we're conscious in what we're doing. So a good example was an ant colony can overtake their queen and establish a democracy, right? Like these are the only things that humans can do. We can actually decide where we want to go. And that's what makes us different. So we need to utilize our strongest asset, which is that ability. And I did it kind of like I'm a very system thinker like you, Maya, and I kind of took an inventory of the world after leaving college. And I realized, a lot of our problems basically on organizing ourselves. Like, we need to have a vision, and we know what we all do, and we all do our independent things towards that one goal. And my answer trying to do that as I link towards supply chain management software. And that's exactly what it does. It unites all the participants in the supply chain, the farmer, the processor, manufacturers, to the retailer, down to the consumer, into one ecosystem, and it's able to share information, share payments, stuff like that. And it's basically how the whole world functions, So then I began that research. I actually have something I wanted to share just to show. Can I see my screen? Click there. Okay, you guys see my screen? You guys see this? Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, mate, we got you.
Cool. So this just came out today from the World Economic Forum, and it's talking about the need for having development of supply chains relative to blockchain. And it's really correlated to the COVID situation that happened and how it disrupted the supply chains. But basically, it's talking about the way to solve its biggest problem and meeting the world's needs. But we have the solutions. We just need to connect it. And we do that with supply chain software. So this is a very interesting article. And in response to that, I wrote a white paper that talked about how we're able to do these things using blockchain. And that's we want to bring Industry 4.0 into the mix. It's an incredible time, right? So I just said like the answer to solving the world's problem is supply chain management software. And all of a sudden we have these great digital technologies to do that. And I realized that blockchain, IoT, and AI are best suited for supply chain management, right? So you have the sensors that are gathering data from the world, from our supply chains, that's feeding into computer systems that get stored in blockchain databases so they can be altered and changed. And then we have AI that's analyzing all the information and just streamlining it, making it more efficient, optimizing it for where we want to go. which is going to take a lot of fat off of our supply chain, making it more efficient, more lean, and that's going to allow us to get what we want faster. And we have a strategic advantage, right? We're in an industrial revolution, so this gives the opportunity to leap beyond the current infrastructure and where things are at right now. And that's what we need to do, take to our advantage, right? So all the people in this group, all the people that we're networking with, we need to be educated on Industry 4.0 and using that for the people, because we all know the corporations are going to adopt it, but we need to be able to unite these technologies with the people. So that's why I really love what you're doing, Kent. I think that's like the most disruptive business model. It's beautiful. Another thing, so I wrote this back in 2018, and it did a pretty good job of telling what I think we need in terms of supply chain software side. But the good news is a lot of that's really developed. It's more about changing the vision of how to use it, right? With like tokenizations of assets and tokens and whatnot. But then I moved on into focusing on the infrastructure side of things. So I wrote this proposal I call it California 4.0, and it's about building smart infrastructure in California for the hemp industry, like I mentioned. So there's a reason why I love hemp. It's because it's the most versatile resource on the planet. It can feed you, it can house you, it can clothe you, you can drive in a car with electric batteries, the whole car can be made out of hemp. It just does so many things, and it's so productive and efficient at doing so. I'm not sure if you guys know the stats on it, but just comparing a few metrics. This is talking about clothing, right? Hemp fabrics versus cotton. Hemp uses 1/3 times less water and chemicals as cotton does. So that alone, and cotton textiles right now is one of the biggest polluters on the planet. So just by simply replacing cotton for hemp, right, we were just 10x our solving our problems. Paper production, hemp grows 4 times the amount of cellulose as trees do, right? So that's another major problem, stopping deforestation. What I also love about hemp is that the amount of CO2 that it absorbs as it grows and it stores into the soil. Now, as we mentioned before, with hempcrete, you mix the inside of the hemp plant is hemp herd. You mix it with lime and water, right? Very simple ingredients, and it acts as a carbon sink for the rest of its life. So it's constantly going to sucking CO2 to harden itself. So we were making our housing out of this, our walls out of this, and not only is it a sustainable building solution, it's also solving climate change by reducing CO2. So just to show, like, this plant is absolutely incredible. So that's why we're really focused on building infrastructure for the hemp industry because of its vast importance. So I wrote this document, kind of explain what we're doing there, everything from the farming, Central Valley, to decortication, manufacturing, and distribution, kind of is all laid out in this one deck right here. And the way we're making this happen, right, as I said, I have a really big vision, a really big plan. This business plan alone is a project, right? It's somewhere around, it needs $1 billion to fund. And like, that sounds crazy. Like, how can you build $1 billion business from scratch? Well, in 2017, there's an amazing opportunity that hit the United States. Can't remember the name right now, but basically the Opportunity Zone program. And what it did was it created a capital gains tax deferral system for basically institutional banks and accredited investors. And what that means, capital gains is when you buy a stock at 1,000, it appreciates, that's your capital gains. When you sell that stock, you usually got to pay taxes on it. So what the government did was, like, if you sell your stock and you have capital gains and you put that into an Opportunity Zone fund, you can defer your tax gains for up to 10 years. And at the end of the 10 years, you actually pay nothing on that capital gain. So that's like really crazy, right? So especially for the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy is the largest economy in the world. And based on the fact that we had the past 10 years, we had economic growth. Now, everyone's saying we're going to have a economic recession pretty soon, especially because of the COVID situation. So a lot of companies are going to be selling all that capital gain they just got. And that's going to be feeding into these programs. And the IRS estimate there's about $6 trillion worth of capital gains looking to go into these Opportunity Zone funds. And just because it was started in 2017, there's not enough projects for this capital to go into. As to date, there's about 500 Opportunity Zone funds, represents roughly about $50 billion, $100 billion worth of actual funding. And we have 6 trillion, right? So there's just so much opportunity on the table. And what the industry, Opportunity Zone side really needs is more people of like us, our type, to create big ideas for this money to go to the funds. So that's what I'm also working on. So I created a hemp OZ fund, me and my business partner, and this lays out the whole infrastructure plan I just talked about. So, like I said, farming land, decortication, processing, and whatnot. And you could just see through this pretty simple slide, total cost of the project is $575 million. And this is with one OZ fund. And there's no limit to the number of OZ funds you can fund. And actually the real sauce is the project. An Opportunity Zone project can take unlimited capital from multiple OZ funds. So this is how we're able to say, like, we want to build a city in Maya's background right now. Like, this is who's going to build it, who's going to design it. These are the people that farm it. If you can get the people together the money will come. And I already actually proven the model. This proposal for California 4.0, that kind of lays out the vision. It has a lot of pictures and talks about you know, how we're all one cooperative, all working together, and it's all aligned for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I sent that to an expert in the opportunity zone industry, and he was completely baffled. He was saying this is a top 5, top 10% project proposal he's ever seen in the opportunity zone space. And he doesn't even know the half of it. This is kind of an outdated document where I sent to him, and then now like connecting with all you guys and the further connections I just made recently in 2020 alone, we're top 1%, top 2%, right? So it's a really amazing opportunity to have, and raising lots of capital to fund our ideas, because that was the biggest thing I saw, especially in the cannabis space. There's a lack of access to funding, and like I think the ideas are there. You have the entrepreneurs are ready to do it, but we don't have the funding, the capital going to support them. And just to develop an MVP, like everybody was expecting an entrepreneur to have its own generating business and, you know, to make revenue before they can actually raise money. And that's not necessarily the case. So I'm really big on research and development and supporting entrepreneurs. And my kind of grand vision is a city down here called California City. And I'm really wanting to make it like the emblem of California, right? All the things that California represents, technology, beautiful nature, the diversity of people, all in one place. You know, I want to bring back world fairs and just showcase the best technology, but also how we're using it to build sustainable cities. And that's kind of like the whole premise.
Yeah, and on that, sorry to interrupt, Rob, but on that, what we might do is let's continue on that at the end of this, because we're going to finish with Michael McElliott, who I'm sure is busting out to contribute, provide some info. Kent's just pulled up a banging bloody background with his smart city. Obviously, guys, we're going to talk a lot more about this and work out how we work together. It all connects. And what I put next, and thank you so much, Rob, that was awesome, brother, was Jim Gale, who